Hafa to our viewers on Guam and the NMI. We're just moments away from the governor's press conference where he's expected to talk about a possible partial government shutdown ahead of the legislature's battle over the budget. So the governor just walked in and we're expected to begin any moment now.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Well, unfortunately, we're here to... Oh, is that better? Okay. We're here to talk about the budget, and I would like your questions or issues regarding the budget, and that'll be the topic for today. But at any rate, knowing the fact that it's September 27, Tuesday, excuse me, we gave the budget to the House on April 1st, April, whatever that, no, I think it was April 1st. The House took them all the way to August 25th, I think, on a Saturday. And let me just make sure that the date is right, so I don't want to be accused of misinformation again. August 27 is when they passed the budget, and they transmitted that budget to the Senate the following Monday, which is August 29. That gave the Senate, because they just passed the budget last week, Friday, the Senate actually passed the budget within a month of the House. And I want to inform the community that they will be having a session today. If they're going to reject the Senate version, that leaves me with a couple more days. So I am legitimately warning the community that there might be a potential shutdown, and I am 100% blaming it on the leadership of the House, because it took them this long to pass this budget. It is not fair for any of the government employee to be worrying whether there's going to be a shutdown or not. And so again, I want all the government employees to know that I'm very disappointed with the House leadership that this budget has been given to them, and it took them all the way to August 27 to pass on a Saturday. So that is my message to everyone. Sure.
Governor, if I could just ask you if you've talked to Senate and House leadership, and if there's any hope for a conference committee, right? Because this is typically how the budget goes. Each House denies the other's proposal, and then they meet in conference. So is there no hope for compromise in a conference committee based on your conversations?
Well, I have not talked to any of the House leadership. I have talked to the Senate. Obviously, I want to give them praise, and I praised all of them, that it took them less than a month to come out with their version, and they passed a budget that is best for the community and best for the government. I am hopeful, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, then I will be calling for a shutdown. And Thomas, and to everyone, it's not fair for the House to hold this budget bill and to pass in August, late August, almost September, and then expect the governor to just sign it in a day. It's just it's really negligent on their part. And I want to thank the Senate for passing a balanced budget.
I just wanted to follow up. How many employees will be out of work if this partial government shutdown does in fact happen?
Well, we have to go back to the definition on what essential employees. So I don't know off the top of my head on the actual number, but based on the definition, I think public health obviously continue to move forward, and the law enforcement continue, as long as they're essential definitions.
And just my last question before passing it on to my colleagues. What is the major issue is there, with the budget? I know you've outlined particular cuts to particular agencies. It seems that the ARP appropriation authority is one of the major issues, if you can clarify. But where will compromise, where are you willing to compromise?
But first of all, again, if you don't have the authority to reprogram or even program ARPA funds, that should be first out of the question. And the second, same with the compact impact. You don't have the authority, and again, if we're going to continue to argue back and forth, we're going to be September 30, and that'll call for a shutdown. So my compromise is the Senate has passed a budget, whether I agree with it 100%, but it's definitely a budget that will move forward and is as more balanced than definitely than what the House passed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Mr. Governor.
Okay.
So a couple of questions to follow up on what you were just saying. In a perfect world, if the legislature is to send a budget proposal your way, you mentioned August 27th. You know, that's too late. It's not fair for them to do it at that point. In a perfect world, what is enough lead time for the legislature to provide something of this import to your office?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, right? One is, first, how they acted on the ARPA funds is totally illegal. They have no authority to reprogram or program or decide what percent to use. I mean, that's the biggest part of it. So when you put an 80% ARPA fund and 20 and you switch that around, that in itself is already an unbalanced budget. So that's the biggest part, the biggest issue that we have here. Pass it early August, early July, right? I mean, how long does it take? I mean, if there's anything that the legislature, the House representative, their biggest mandate is for the budget.
And then I just have one other follow-up based on what you said. Thanks for that, by the way. The other one is, you mentioned that you did speak with the Senate and that you did not speak with the House. Is there a different thing in place where you have a better flow of communication to get things to the Senate, where you don't have the same communication channels to speak with the House?
My door's open.
So I have one more follow-up on that. And only, I speak this off of, I've heard this frustration, not for you in particular, but just from some of our elected leaders in general. It's a common phrase that my door is always open. Not just from you, again, from also, we've heard it from
Sure.
the House, we've heard it from the Senate. Does anybody take that first step? Who do you think is responsible to take that first step to make that approach?
I don't want to blame anybody, and my door's open.
Would you ever consider talking to them?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, if they come up over, if they call me, I'll be more than happy to talk to them. Always.
Thank you.
I guess we're just go down the line.
So Governor, the other day, or just a few days ago, the House Ways and Means Committee held their own media conference and disputed certain statements that you make regarding certain expenditures for budget allocations for certain departments and agencies, which you had said that they made cuts to, but in their analysis of it, they had allocated more funds to these departments and agencies, such as the Carolinian Affairs Office, compared to your budget proposal. What do you have to say to these statements?
We're going to go back to the same thing what I said. If you don't have the authority to reprogram or program or allocate funds to ARPA, and you only have local revenue, on that local revenue, it shows that reduction. It's plain and simple. If you're going to come back and say, well, because I'm using ARPA funds, it increased. You can't increase a budget. You can't increase a division when you're already touching money that you don't have the authority. Do they have the authority to reprogram PSS funds, federal programs? Why haven't they have done that? Why haven't they done any other? Because they don't have the authority. So for them to arbitrarily say, well, we have the authority, you cannot have the authority. And even if they pass a law, even if it becomes a law, they cannot write a letter, write a proposal, write a description, and say, I want you to take this money and use it for this. It's the governor's office that has that authority. So again, there's no other jurisdiction or state that is reprogrammed by the legislature like what they're trying to claim. So when you, again, if you don't have the authority to touch funds, reprogram, or otherwise, then what their action is shows that they did, in fact, reduce public health by 900,000 and so forth.
Good morning, Governor. During the House Majority's press conference, they cited a survey saying that 8 states have executive decision rights over ARPA allocations, and 6 states have legislative authority over ARPA allocations, and 34 states have joint legislative executive authority. What's your
Yeah, join, right? So again, who would join? Is that with the Senate, with the House, and the executive?
joint legislative executive authority? Yeah.
Yeah. Does that allow only the legislature? So if I say, okay, let's join together, right? Let's join together, and here's ARPA funds. Where do we want to spend the money? That you are included into this process. But to arbitrarily say that they have the authority and I don't, then that's not the right way. That's wrong.
And the House Majority cited the planning, budgeting, and auditing, including taxation provisions in the budget bill.
Mhm.
What's your response?
No, I think they should definitely take it away. You do that on a standalone bill. How do you propose, again, include this into the budget when you haven't even passed, it's not even a law yet, and you're trying to realize and try to appropriate funds for it?
Can we have a comment from legal standpoint, Mr. Burgess?
Sure. Gil?
As we've explained before, we believe the Constitution is pretty clear that they can't enter into something like they tried with the House bill with adding the tax for sugar-sweetened beverages and tobacco tax. I mean, they cite the statute, the 7204, Title I. I don't even believe that stands for authority for that proposition, but then they ignored the Constitution. I think the Senate Legal Counsel got it right and seems to agree with our position that they couldn't include that in there, and then the Senate did the right thing and took that out of their version of the budget bill.
Mr. Burgess, how about the ARPA issue?
Yeah, I believe that's the same thing as we've said before. I believe the authority to disperse the funds resides in the executive, resides in the governor, the ARPA funds. I know they cite this statistic from the National Conference of State Legislatures, but we don't know that's what even there. Every state has their own law, has their own constitution. We believe under our laws that the power resides in the governor.
Gary? Gavin?
Did we, Gil, did you have time to talk to the lawyers at the House side, explain this thing to them? And
Did you do that the last
can't
elec-
believe
the
one
last
side of
bill?
the legislature, the council says go,
Okay.
and the other
Well,
one,
the council says no.
I've had some conversations with the House Legal Counsel, and I would say it would probably be characterized more we agree to disagree.
Okay. Chris, you have any questions?
How do you predict this ends and when?
I don't know what the House, I know they have a session today. I know the House has a session today. I don't know what the result will be. I know in the normal process, the Senate will have a conference committee, they appoint 3, I think maybe 4 for alternate, and then the House does the same. And then they hash it out and then bring the final product. And I don't think they're gonna do a joint session, but a separate session, an emergency session, where they pass it out and then it comes here I bring in the AG office, and we sit down with OMB, and then we review the budget. That's the process.
Governor, I know you already mentioned this, but can you just elaborate more? By partial shutdown, who will report on duty?
Well, we're gonna, I mean, the council is here, but under the shutdown, there's a provision there, definition on who are essential. So if you're not part of the essential, then you don't report to work.
Just to elaborate a little further, we are beginning preparations for the potential government shutdown. Many people of this government or in the office were there 2 years ago when we had the midnight budget pass, and we had to contemplate and prepare for a possible government shutdown. I know the last time we had an actual government shutdown, I was with the Attorney General's office, and we prepared for that. So we have certain procedures. We are meeting tomorrow with a group of government officials, staff, and we are going to review and go over the list, and the list involves essential government employees, and we're going to see who's essential. Update our list and have it prepared, ready to go, just in case.
Just to follow up to Ferdy's question, are we talking about hundreds or thousands of employees?
It's gonna be thousands.
I'm not sure the exact number, but who are going to be, let's just call it furlough, for lack of a better word. It probably is going to be like in the thousands.
And Governor, if I could just also follow up quickly, the House also argues that this is a bipartisan. Their budget is bipartisan, given that it was passed unanimously.
Sure.
Your colleagues in the Republican Party,
Sure.
put their check mark and signature on it. So, what do you have to say to that part of the argument, and also the fact that some may say it's an election year, and that there's politics at play with people's livelihoods?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly those that voted for it. Again, they'll answer for that question. What's the reason for voting on it? My point here is, first of all, it came at the very last, on August 27th. You don't blame the minority for that. Who do you blame for that? Obviously, it's the majority. Obviously, you look into the committee, who chairs the committee. I mean, if you want to talk about politics, and it's political year, passing this kind of budget late of the year should never be part. It doesn't matter whether it's political year or not. It is the right thing to pass the budget earlier than what it is and never jeopardize any government employee. Whoever voted for it, they'll respond for that. But when you pass a budget that this late, it's not about politics. I don't know what politics they're playing. But definitely I'm not playing politics when it comes down to people's life. Never have. So I want to ask them, what kind of politics are they playing when they risk people's livelihood, putting food on the table? Why did they wait this late? So thank you for that question, Thomas. And maybe you should ask them, why did you ask them that? Why did they pass this budget this late?
I haven't had the chance.
Okay, maybe you should, so that we see what kind of politics they're playing.
Mr. Governor, let's just say everything works out, somehow the Senate and the House, they get everything figured out, and they bring that proposal to you. Granted, you have to take your time and go through it and everything, but what would a reasonable turnaround time be for you, based on if they're able to come up with an agreement?
Brad, I appreciate that question, Brad, because the more time you have, right, the more you're able to look at every question, every line, every word, because every word matters, whether it's shall, must, and those little words makes a difference in this budget. We have a great team with OMB, obviously our legal counsel, and the last time we did this, we actually had AG's office in here, in this office, and we literally burned the midnight oil. I think we stopped at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, came back again that next, like at 6 o'clock. But in order for me to really look at and digest what is the right budget, the language that's input, I don't want to say again 2 days or 3 days, because I don't want legislature to think, oh, governor said 3 days is more than enough for him. But at this point, the earlier they pass the budget, the better it is for me, OMB, and AG's office to look the legality of the budget. But the sooner they pass, the better it is.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Governor, how do you respond to the House majority's statement, like two or three lawmakers or majority members said that your administration is engaged in lavish spending and that you're spending government money like there's no tomorrow, and that DPS has a lot of new cars that they cannot count how many of them?
So a couple of things, right? Fred, I think some of the comments that you made, I think before, you don't hear me go and complain about other people, right? I mean, unless they start coming here. To have a legislature, a majority, to increase $1.2 million in their budget, I think they gotta look at themselves first before they start attacking others. Those that are attacking DPS, when they need something, when a family member needs 911, needs an emergency, who do they call? 911. Who's there to help? Whether it's defense, police officers, and so forth. So it is lavish when you have to update all their vehicles. Is it lavish that you need to update their computer? Is it lavish when you have to do all of this in order for your department to provide better services? How do you provide better services if all your equipment is 20 years old, 10 years old? Regardless what it is. Every one of us here need to update our equipment in order for us to provide better health care, better public service, better 911, better emergency EMT vehicles, ambulance. We need to update all of our vehicles and update all the training for every government employees. Then you can ask for a better service. So I think that their increase of 1.2 million, I think that's what you call more lavish, because they cut other services and they increased their requests on their own budget for discretionary. So you call that lavish?
One more question, Governor. The House also said that. Sorry, give me a minute.
Thomas, you have one question?
Yeah, you began today's press conference saying you give 100% blame to the House. But doesn't the buck stop with you? Do you take any responsibility on the delay of this budget?
How? Give me one reason.
I'm asking you.
No, you're asking me why should I take one reason? I gave the budget. I did constitutional obligation, and I met that by giving them April 1st. They took their time all the way till today, till August 29. Who is to blame? That leadership. You got to take ownership whether you did it right or you did it wrong. And they passed that budget on a Saturday? What happened to transparency, accountability? All these months, and then you call a session on a Saturday when you know how important, how critical this budget is? So I think, and again, I'm here. I've burned a midnight oil before, and if that's what it takes for me to make sure that I sign this bill, but I can't sign the bill, Thomas, if it doesn't get here before September 30. So how can I give them credit for it? I can give the Senate credit for having a budget that they passed within a month, because they know how critical it is. How can I give the House credit for waiting? So that's April, May, June, July, August, almost 5 months for the only most important constitutional obligation of the legislature is to pass a balanced budget. All right, guys, if there's no other question, I'd like to last Freddie.
I remember now my question. Can you clarify about the issue that they raised that about about some of your cabinet members are getting raised.
Who? I mean, if you want to talk and start blaming people, I think you should man up and say, name the people who got a raise in the cabinet. So who?
They did not mention names.
Trust me, if there's one, they'll be happy to announce who. But for somebody, a legislature, to just arbitrarily say, oh, they're giving so much raises to the cabinet, man up and mention who the cabinet member is. Do an OGA. They done all the OGA in the world for me. Why don't they do OGA? So they can man up on what they're talking to the community.
But there was a proposal, right?
They also signed that proposal, even with this budget, in 2022. If I'm not mistaken, I can raise the cabinet members. They voted on it. We took the same language and we incorporated for 2023. So they agreed, they voted on it for me to increase the cabinet. I have not done so. So I challenge them. Please, if I were you guys, media, please, I ask you to go back and ask all those folks that are talking about giving raise. Governor said he challenged you to please provide documents who in the cabinet has gotten raise. Okay. If not, I'd like to thank all of you for your time and have a great day.
Can I ask a quick question? As the government replaces vehicles, has there been any thought towards electric vehicles? Like sort of does the government have a plan to implement EVs?
Thank you for that, Chris, because actually CUC has a couple of EVs already. We actually been talking with Gary how to incorporate more EVs here and where can we put, logistically, where can we put plugs, charging station for those EVs. But yes, we actually been talking to some of the vendors here if there's available EVs and when are they coming. They're not as easily accessible but as we would like, but we are working on getting more EVs here.
And then last question for me, just with the debate coming up, what are you doing to prep for that? And what do you think are the big issues where you have differences?
But you know, Chris, I think being governor, you handle with all the issues. Just knowing, making sure that all the facts are in place and to disseminate to the community correct information and let them know what I've done and what I'll continue to do.
Are you prepping? Are you practicing?
That's a secret. Of course, everybody's prepping for it. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Doug, can you just respond to former executive Iacopo's claims that you denied his leave and that your principles no longer align, which is a result of his resignation? Can you respond to that?
I don't want to go into Stanley's personal issues, and I'll just leave it at that for now. All I know is I want to thank him for his service.
Did you deny him his and why?
I think that's a personal matter. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to violate anything. But I want to just thank him for his service and know that I've always been here for all the veterans, and I'll continue to be here for the veterans. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, there you heard it. CNMI Governor Ralph Torres leaving the room now as he just discussed the potential of a partial government shutdown as a result of the budget battle between the Senate and legislature. We're going to be at the Senate at 1 o'clock for their press conference where they're going to address this issue. And then the House is going to be holding an emergency session at 2 p.m. Regarding this budget. So stay tuned to KUAM News and follow us on Instagram at KUAM CNMI. My name is Tomas Maglonia. We'll have more coverage later today.